The Villani colony ship Peaceful Dawn drifted through space like a dying whale, its massive hull scarred from micrometeor impacts and years of deep space travel. Inside the ship's command center, emergency lights cast an eerie red glow across the faces of the bridge crew. Captain Tessara pressed her four-fingered hand against the cool metal of her command chair, feeling the vibrations that told her their great ship was slowly dying. "Engineering report," she called out, her voice carrying the weight of 50. 1,000 lives. Chief Engineer Corvin looked up from his console, his usually bright purple skin now pale with exhaustion. The quantum drive core suffered a cascade failure. The containment field collapsed completely. We're running on backup power, but it won't last long. Tessara closed her large dark eyes for a moment. 3 months ago, they had left their dying homeworld with hopes of reaching New Villana, a planet their scouts had found in the Outer Rim. It was supposed to be their salvation, their new beginning. Now they were stranded in the most dangerous part of the galaxy. "Captain," her communications officer Veltar spoke up, his voice cracking with fear. "Oxygen reserves are down to 67 hours. The life support systems are failing faster than we anticipated." Around the bridge, the crew exchanged worried glances. Everyone knew what this meant. In less than 3 days, the air would run out. 50,000 Villani civilians sleeping in the cold storage bays below would never wake up. The children in the family quarters would never see their new world. Tessara stood slowly, her tall frame casting long shadows in the emergency lighting. Through the massive viewport, she could see the stars, beautiful, distant, and uncaring. Somewhere out there was New Villana, their promised land, but it might as well have been in another universe. "Send the distress signal on all frequencies," she commanded, her voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at her heart. "Emergency priority. Include our coordinates, ship specifications, and passenger count." Veltar's fingers danced across his console. "Signal broadcasting, Captain. Full spectrum. Maximum power." The distress call shot out into the void like a desperate scream. It carried their story, their hope, their fear. The message was simple but heartbreaking. A peaceful colony ship, filled with families seeking a new home, was dying in space. They needed help? Any help. From anyone willing to listen, the signal raced through space at the speed of light, reaching the automated listening posts scattered throughout the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, communication officers received the transmission. Most deleted it immediately. The neutral zone was a death trap, a lawless region where pirates hunted and honest ships went to die. The major galactic powers had written off this sector long ago. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, a Carillion merchant captain read the message and shook his head. 50,000 refugees, he muttered to his first officer. "It's probably worth a fortune to the right buyer, but not worth getting killed over." The hegemony patrol ships received the signal, but their commanders had strict orders. No unauthorized operations in the neutral zone. Admiral Tethron announced to his fleet, "Let the Deathworlders handle it if they're stupid enough to try." 3 days' travel away, deep in human space, the signal finally found someone willing to listen. Admiral Park Dongwu was reviewing fleet reports in his ready room aboard the battleship Iron Resolve when the transmission came through. At 55, Park had fought in more battles than he cared to remember. His face bore the scars of a boarding action on Kepler Station, and his left hand was a mechanical replacement after a plasma grenade had nearly killed him 5 years ago. "Admiral." Lieutenant Kimbora's voice crackled through the CUM system. "Priority transmission coming in. It's a distress call." Park made his way to the bridge, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plates. The Iron Resolve was the flagship of the Third Fleet, a massive battleship bristling with railguns, missile tubes, and energy weapons. Around it, 11 other human warships maintained formation as they patrolled the border regions. "Put it." On the main screen, Park ordered. The bridge fell silent as they listened to the alien transmission. The Villani language was translated by the ship's computer, but the desperation in Captain Tessara's voice needed no translation. Sir Buar said carefully, "The transmission is coming from the neutral zone. Regulations clearly state that we cannot enter that region without direct authorization from Earth Command. Park stared at the tactical display showing the location of the distress signal. Red warning markers indicated known pirate activity. Dead zones where ships disappeared without a trace, and gravitational anomalies that could crush a vessel in seconds. "How long to reach their position?" he asked. "At maximum burn, 18 hours, sir. But Admiral, we don't know anything about these aliens. They could be hostile. This could be a trap." Ark's weathered face remained expressionless as he considered the options. The smart play was to report the distress call to Earth Command and let them decide. It would take weeks for orders to come back, and by then the Volani would be dead. The safe play was to ignore the signal entirely, but Park hadn't become an admiral by playing it safe. "Communications, get me a channel to all ships in the fleet." "Channel open, sir." Park's voice carried across the void to every human ship in the formation. "This is Admiral Park to all vessels. We have received a distress call from a civilian colony ship. 50,000 beings are going to die unless someone helps them. I know the regulations. I know the risks. Any captain who wishes to return to base has my permission to do so. No questions asked, no marks on your record." He paused, looking around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These men and women had followed him through hell before. He saw the answer in their eyes before anyone spoke. "Sir," came the voice of Captain Lee Minho from the destroyer Courageous. "My ship is ready to follow you anywhere." One by one, the other captains reported in. Not a single ship turned back. "Plot a course for the distress beacon," Park ordered. "All ships, maximum burn. And someone get me everything we know about these Volani aliens." The human fleet turned as one, their fusion drives igniting like 12 new stars. They accelerated toward the neutral zone, toward danger, toward a species they had never met but could not abandon. Behind them, they left the safety of human space. Ahead lay the unknown, the deadly, and the desperate. But Admiral Park had made his choice. Somewhere in the darkness, 50,000 innocent beings were counting on them. The Iron Resolve and her sisters raced through the void, carrying humanity's answer to the Volani distress call. They were coming, regulations be damned. Because sometimes doing the right thing mattered more than following orders. The space around the dying Volani colony ships suddenly rippled like water as 12 massive shapes tore through the fabric of reality itself. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace with a thunderous flash of energy that lit up the darkness for thousands of kilometers in every direction. On the bridge of Peaceful Dawn, sensor operator Nixtel nearly fell from his station as alarms shrieked throughout the ship. His 3 eyes went wide as he stared at the readings flooding his screens. "Captain, 12 unknown vessels just dropped out of hyperspace. They're huge." His voice cracked with terror as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Captain Tessara rushed to the sensor station, her heart pounding. After 67 hours of drifting helplessly through space, watching their oxygen slowly run out, any new arrival could mean salvation or destruction. "Ship classifications," she demanded. Nixtel's hand shook as he worked his controls. "I've never seen designs like these, Captain. They're not in any of our databases. The ships are angular, brutal-looking, built for war, not exploration or trade. The largest one is nearly 2 kilometers long. On the main view screen, the human fleet appeared like mechanical predators emerging from the void. The ships were dark metal and sharp edges, bristling with weapon ports and armored plating. They moved with purpose and deadly grace, forming a protective formation around the helpless colony ship. Captain Communications Officer Veltar whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm picking up their identification signals. They're from Sol 3. A collective gasp went through the bridge crew. Even children in the Outer Rim had heard the stories about Sol 3, the third planet from a yellow star in a distant spiral arm. It was the homeworld of the Deathworlders, the species that the galaxy feared above all others. The humans, Chief Engineer Corvin breathed. The stories say they come from a world so deadly that nothing should be able to survive there. They say humans can breathe poison, survive in vacuum, and fight wars that would destroy entire civilizations. Nixtel's voice trembled as he continued reading his sensors. Captain, their weapon signatures are off the charts. Each ship has enough firepower to glass a planet. What do we do? Before Tassara could answer, Lieutenant Kim Bora's voice crackled across space from the human flagship. Incoming transmission from the lead vessel? The main screen flickered, and suddenly, Admiral Park Dongwoo's face appeared before them. The Villani crew took an involuntary step backward. They had never seen a human before, and the sight was both fascinating and terrifying. Park's features were sharp and angular, his skin weathered by years of conflict. Scars crossed his face, and his left eye had been replaced with a cybernetic implant that glowed softly blue. But it was his expression that surprised them most. Despite the fearsome appearance, his eyes held warmth and determination, not the cold hunger they had expected from a Deathworlder. Villani vessel, peaceful dawn. This is Admiral Park Dongwoo of the Terran Defense Corps' 3rd Fleet. His voice was steady and reassuring. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Captain Tassara found herself unable to speak. The most feared species in the galaxy had just offered to help them. It didn't make sense, according to everything she had been taught before. She could respond, Nixtel screamed from his sensor station. Captain, new contacts. Coming in fast from the asteroid field. The tactical display exploded with red warning markers as 7 ships emerged from the shadows of nearby asteroids. These vessels were different from the human ships, crude, patched together from salvaged parts, their hulls scarred by countless battles and painted with terrifying symbols. Korthok Raiders, Corvan shouted. They've been hunting in this sector for months. The Korthok were among the most vicious pirates in the galaxy. They took no prisoners, showed no mercy, and were known to sell their victims to slave markets. In the Outer Rim, their ships moved like hungry sharks, circling the disabled colony ship. On the human flagship, Admiral Park's expression darkened as he studied the new arrivals. Pirates, he muttered to his bridge crew.
Looks like they were
waiting for someone to respond to the distress call. The lead Korthok vessel, a massive battle cruiser called Blood Harvester, opened communications. The image of Captain Vexter appeared on screens throughout both fleets. He was a nightmare made flesh, 7 feet tall, covered in ritual scars, cybernetic implants replacing parts of his skull. His yellow eyes gleamed with sadistic pleasure. Oh well, Vexter's voice was like grinding metal. Fresh prey and Deathworlders in the same place. Today is profitable indeed. Human dogs, you will surrender the colony ship and your vessels, or watch 50,000 civilians die slowly. Admiral Park's response was immediate and cold. All ships, battle stations. Protect the civilians at all costs. What happened next would be remembered by the Villani for generations. The human fleet didn't hesitate, didn't negotiate, didn't try to find a peaceful solution. They simply acted. Captain Lee Minno's destroyer, courageous, suddenly accelerated. 2 impossible speeds, its fusion drive burning like a miniature sun. The Korthok Raiders had barely begun to react when the human ship slammed directly into the side of Blood Harvester, like a spear thrown by an angry god. The collision was devastating. The Courageous's reinforced hull, designed to withstand meteor impacts and energy weapons, punched through the pirate ship's shields like they were made of paper. Metal screamed against metal as the 2 vessels ground together in a shower of sparks and debris. Boarding parties away. Minho's voice was calm despite the chaos surrounding his ship. Through the breach his vessel had created, armored human, Marines launched themselves into the enemy ship using nothing but magnetic grapples and their own courage. The space battle that followed was unlike anything the Villani had ever witnessed. Human ships moved through the void with deadly precision, their weapons systems coordinating in perfect harmony. Railguns fired streams of metal projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Missile volleys created brilliant explosions that lit up the darkness. Energy beams carved through enemy hulls like hot knives through butter. The Korthok pirates, despite their reputation for viciousness, found themselves completely outmatched. Their crude weapons and tactics meant nothing against human military. Doctrine, the Deathworlders fought with a combination of advanced technology and primal fury that was absolutely terrifying to behold. Within minutes, 3 Korthok ships were nothing but expanding clouds of debris. The remaining pirates, their leader dead and their fleet shattered, fled back into the asteroid field from which they had come. The silence that followed was deafening. On the bridge of Peaceful Dawn, the Vellani crew stared in stunned amazement. At the human fleet, these weren't the monsters of galactic legend. They were protectors who had risked everything to save strangers. Admiral Park's image reappeared on their screen. Despite the battle that had just concluded, he looked as calm as when he had first introduced himself. Vellani's ship, this is Admiral Park. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Prepare to receive our rescue teams. We're going to get you and your people to safety. The airlock between the human transport and the Vellani colony ship hissed open with a sharp metallic clang. Commander Jang Hai-jin stepped through first, her magnetic boots clicking against the alien deck plates. Behind her, 12 human Marines followed in perfect formation, their advanced combat suits gleaming under the emergency lighting. The first thing that hit them was the smell, a mixture of ozone, fear, and the sweet scent that all Vellani ships carried. The corridors of Peaceful Dawn were wider than human ships. Designed for the taller Vellani people, they felt cramped and desperate now. As soon as the Vellani civilians saw the armored figures, panic spread like wildfire. Children screamed and hid behind their parents. Adults pressed themselves against the walls, their large dark eyes filled with terror. Some tried to run, stumbling over each other in their desperation to escape the dreaded Deathworlders. "Please, don't hurt us." An elderly Vellani male cried out in broken galactic standard, his forearms raised in surrender. "We have nothing of value." Jin could see the fear radiating from every person in the corridor. These people had been taught that humans were monsters, savage beasts who conquered worlds and enslaved entire species. Now, they were trapped on a dying ship with the very creatures they feared most. Without hesitation, Hai-jin reached up and disengaged her helmet seals. The protective headgear retracted with a soft hiss, revealing her face. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Her black hair was tied back in a practical ponytail, and there was genuine warmth in her expression. "Easy," she said softly, her voice carrying no threat, only compassion. "We're here to help. My name is Hai-jin. We received your distress call." The Vellani stared in amazement. This wasn't the monster they expected. She looked ... human, vulnerable, real. "You ... you came to help us?" asked a Vellani mother, clutching her young child protectively. "That's what We do," Hai-jin replied with a smile. "Now, let's get your ship fixed, so we can get you all to safety." Within minutes, human rescue teams were spreading throughout the massive colony ship like beneficial antibodies fighting an infection. Each team had a specific mission, and they executed their tasks with the kind of efficiency that only came from years of training and genuine dedication. In the engineering section, the situation was desperate. Chief Engineer Choi Soo-min squeezed through a maintenance shaft that was barely large enough for his shoulders. The conduit was filled with toxic Vellani coolant that had been leaking for hours, creating a poisonous atmosphere that would kill most species within minutes. Velahan, the Vellani chief engineer, watched in disbelief from the corridor as the human disappeared into what should have been a death trap. "He can't survive in there," Velahan muttered to his assistant. "The coolant vapors will burn his lungs apart." But Soo-min kept working. His breathing apparatus filtered out the worst of the toxins, but the human body's natural resistance too. Poisons evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill you, did the rest. He jury-rigged connections, bypassed damaged systems, rerouted power flows with an expertise that impressed even the Vellani engineers. "Got it." "House." Soo-min's voice echoed through the CUM system as lights began flickering back to life throughout the ship. He emerged from the conduit covered in alien coolant, his face streaked with purple fluid, but grinning with satisfaction. "Your people." "You're not afraid of anything," Velahan observed, his voice filled with awe. Soo-min wiped the toxic coolant from his face and laughed. "We're terrified all the time. We just don't let it stop us from doing what needs to be done." Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Dr. Kang Ji-won faced his own challenges. The Vellani had physiology completely different from humans. They had 2 hearts, A complex respiratory system with 4 lungs and blood that was copper-based instead of iron-based. Everything he knew about medicine had to be adapted on the fly. The worst case was a young Villani girl, maybe 8 years old in human terms, who had been injured when a support beam collapsed during the engine failure. Her name was Lisai, and her internal injuries were severe. Her parents knelt beside the medical bed, tears streaming down their faces as they watched their daughter fight for life. "Please," the mother begged in broken galactic standard. "Save her. She's all we have." G1 worked with hands that moved like a surgeon and a pianist combined. He used human medical scanners to map Villani's anatomy, adapted human surgical techniques to alien physiology, and drew on decades of experience to perform what was essentially veterinary surgery on a completely unknown species. "Pulse is stabilizing," he announced after 2 hours of delicate work. "The internal bleeding has stopped. Will she live?" the father asked, his voice trembling with hope and fear. Giwan looked at the worried parents, then at the small girl breathing peacefully on the medical bed. "She'll live," he promised, his voice gentle but firm. "I won't let her die." The ship, similar scenes played out dozens of times. Human technicians worked alongside Villani crew members to repair critical systems. Human medics treated injuries that their training had never prepared them for. Human Marines helped evacuate civilians from damaged sections, carrying Villani children and elderly in their arms like precious cargo. The transformation was remarkable. Within hours, the initial terror had given way to amazed respect. The Villani began to see that these weren't the monsters of galactic legend. These were protectors. People who would risk their own lives to save complete strangers. In the ship's main gathering area, hundreds of Villani families waited while repairs continued. Human soldiers sat with Villani children, sharing ration packs and showing them pictures of Earth on their personal devices. The language barrier meant little when compassion was the universal translator. Young Tamir, Villani boy who had been hiding behind his grandmother when the humans first arrived, now sat fascinated as Sergeant Park Junasio showed him holographic images of Earth's oceans. "Your world is covered in water," Tamir asked in wonder. "3/4 of it," Junasio confirmed. "It's beautiful." "Maybe someday you can visit our all humans like you?" the boy asked innocently. Jun-Co smiled. "We try to be. We don't always succeed, but we try." Captain Tessara found herself working directly with Commander Haijin to coordinate the rescue efforts. The human woman had proven to be not only competent, but genuinely caring about the welfare of every Villani on the ship. "Why?" Tessara finally asked during a brief break in their work. "Why risk everything for strangers? Your people could have ignored our distress call." Haijin paused in her review of damage reports and looked at the Villani captain with serious eyes. "Because that's not who we are. Yes, we come from a dangerous world. Yes, we've had to fight to survive. But that doesn't make us monsters. It makes us understand how precious life is." She gestured toward the corridors where humans and Villani were working together. "Every person on the ship matters. Every child. Every parent. Every grandmother. They all have dreams, hopes, people they love. How could we possibly turn our backs on that?" For the first time in days, Tessara felt hope spreading through her hearts. These humans, these supposed Deathworlders, shown her species something they thought had been lost in the galaxy. Genuine kindness from strangers. The void around the peaceful dawn suddenly erupted in blinding flashes of light as 40 Korthak warships tore through the fabric of space itself. The pirate fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of mechanical vultures, their hulls black as the void between stars and covered in the skull markings of their victims. On the bridge of the human flagship Iron Resolve, alarms screamed as the tactical display lit up with hostile contacts. Admiral Park stood calmly at the center of the chaos, his weathered face showing no emotion as he studied the overwhelming enemy force. 40 ships, sir," Lieutenant Kim Biora reported, her voice tight with concern. "They're surrounding us on all sides." The largest of the Korthok vessels was a nightmare made of metal and malice. The dreadnought Bone Crusher stretched nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Bone trophies from 1,000 different species hung from its superstructure like grisly ornaments. Inside, the Bone Crusher's command center. Captain Vexter, the bloodied, studied the human fleet with yellow eyes that burned with hatred. He was a monster even by Korthok standards, 9 feet tall, covered in ritual scars, with cybernetic implants that had replaced half his skull. His left arm was a mechanical claw that could crush steel, and his teeth had been replaced with razor-sharp metal Deathworlders, he spat, his voice like grinding metal. You cost me 3 good ships and a fortune in slaves. I was going to harvest these Villani peacefully, but now I think I'll take my time with them. The communication channel crackled to life as Vexter's hideous face appeared on screens throughout both fleets. Human dogs, you have 10 seconds to surrender your vessels and prepare to be boarded. Do this, and I'll make your deaths relatively quick. Refuse, and I'll feed you to my crews one piece at a time. Admiral Park stepped forward, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the pirate's rage. Counteroffer, Vexter. Leave now, take your fleet, and disappear into whatever hole you crawled out of. Do this and I won't turn your ships into scrap metal. The pirate's laughter was like the sound of breaking glass. 12 ships against 40? You're completely insane, human? Park's eyes hardened, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. No, Vexter, we're human. There's a difference. The battle erupted with the fury of a collapsing star. The Korthok fleet attacked from all directions, their crude but powerful weapons filling space with deadly energy. Plasma beams and missile volleys converged on the human formation, like the fingers of an angry god. But the humans were ready. The 12 ships of the Third Fleet moved with precision that bordered on the supernatural, their formation shifting and flowing like a living thing. They formed a protective shell around the peaceful dawn, their weapons blazing in perfect coordination. Captain Osung Wu's heavy cruiser, Defiant, found itself facing 3 Korthok destroyers at once. The enemy ships hammered his vessel with everything they had, their weapons tearing through armor plating and rupturing hull sections. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. His damage control officer shouted over the noise of alarms. We're losing atmosphere on multiple levels. Engineering, I need more power to the shields, Sungwoo ordered, gripping his command chair as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Sir, we're running on emergency power only, came the reply. The main reactor is offline. The Defiant shook violently as another plasma beam tore through its hull. Sparks flew from damaged consoles and the lights flickered ominously. Through the chaos, Sungwoo could see his crew fighting desperately to keep the ship operational. Sir, weapons are offline, his tactical officer reported. We're sitting ducks. Sunwoo looked at the tactical display, seeing the 3 enemy ships closing in for the kill. His crew looked at him with trust in their eyes, believing he would find a way to save them. He made a decision that would be remembered for generations. All hands brace for impact, he announced calmly. All power to engines. We're going to ram them. The Defiant suddenly surged forward, its damaged engines burning like a dying star. The crew held their positions even as the ship began to come apart around them, their dedication absolute. The collision was spectacular. The Defiant struck the lead Korthok destroyer at nearly 1/3 the speed of light, the impact creating a fireball that could be seen from light years away. The explosion chain reacted through the enemy formation, taking out 2 more pirate ships in a cascade of destruction. But the sacrifice of the Defiant was just the beginning. The Korthok pirates, enraged by their losses, began boarding operations. On the peaceful dawn itself, crewed assault shuttles smashed through the colony ship's hull, disgorging waves of pirate warriors into the corridors. The Korthok boarders were nightmares come to life. Each warrior stood over 7 feet tall, covered in spiked armor and wielding weapons designed to cause maximum pain. They moved through the ship like a plague, killing anyone they encountered. But they hadn't counted on the human Marines. Lieutenant Yu Jae-hook held the main junction leading to the civilian quarters with just 5 Marines. The corridor was narrow, which worked in their favor, but the pirates kept coming in endless waves. Contacts front, Sergeant Kim Min-soo shouted, his plasma rifle cutting down 3 Korthok warriors before they could reach the barricade. Out, Corporal Lee Heywan called, her weapon empty. Here, Jahook tossed her his sidearm while drawing his combat knife. Whatever happens, they don't get through. The Korthok warriors rushed forward, their battle cries echoing through the corridor. They were bigger, stronger, and better armed than the humans. But the Marines had something the pirates didn't. They were fighting for something bigger than themselves, for the civilians. Jahook roared, charging into the enemy ranks with his knife gleaming. For humanity. The hand-to-hand combat was brutal. Human Marines fought with a desperation born of necessity, using every dirty trick and combat technique they had ever learned. They fought not for glory or profit, but for the 50,000 innocent lives depending on them. Throughout the ship, similar battles raged, but something unexpected began to happen. The Volani, inspired by the courage of their human protectors, began to fight back. Captain Tessara found herself in the reactor chamber, firing a human plasma rifle alongside Commander Hyes. The weapon was heavier than anything she had ever used, but she held it steady as pirates poured through the breach they had torn in the hull. "Stay low," Hajin shouted, her own weapon cutting down a Korthok warrior who got too close. "Center mass." "Your people fight like demons," Tessara gasped between shots, amazed at the humans' calm under fire. "We don't fight like demons," Hajin replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We fight like humans." For those who can't fight for themselves, the battle raged for hours. Corridors ran with blood, both human and alien. The air filled with the sounds of weapons fire, screams of pain, and the roar of warriors on both sides. But slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn. The Korthok pirates, for all their viciousness, were used to fighting weak opponents who would surrender quickly. They weren't prepared for the combination of human determination and Volani desperation. Every corridor became a battlefield, every room a fortress. In space, the naval battle reached its climax. The human fleet, reduced to 8 ships, faced the remaining Korthok vessels in a final desperate engagement. Admiral Park's iron resolve dueled directly with the Bone Crusher, their weapons lighting up the void. "Sir, we've lost the Valiant and the Steadfast," Biora reported, her voice cracking with emotion. "We've taken out 23 enemy ships." Park nodded grimly. Cost was high, but they were winning. "Signal all ships. Final assault. Everything we have." The remaining human ships formed up and charged directly at the Korthok dreadnought. It was a desperate gambit, but it worked. The Bone Crusher, damaged by hours of combat, couldn't withstand the concentrated firepower of the entire human fleet. Vexter slashed. Transmission was a scream of rage that cut off abruptly as his ship exploded in a ball of plasma and debris. When the last Korthok vessel was destroyed, the silence of space felt like a cathedral. The human fleet had lost 4 ships and hundreds of good people, but the colony ship was safe. 50,000 Volani civilians would live to see their new world. On the bridge of the peaceful dawn, Captain Tessara stood beside Admiral Park, both of them exhausted but victorious. Through the viewport, they could see the debris field that had once been the Korthok fleet drifting in the void. "It's over," Park said quietly. "Your people are safe." Tessara looked at the human admiral with new respect. "Why did you do it? Why sacrifice so much for strangers?" Park smiled sadly, "Because that's what humans do. Protect those who need protecting, even if it costs us everything." The journey to New Volana stretched across 6 days through the endless void of space. The human fleet maintained protective formation around the peaceful dawn, their ships like guardian angels escorting the massive colony vessel toward its new home. But something remarkable was happening during those 6 days, too completely. Different species were learning to understand each other in the recreation areas of the colony ship. Scenes that would have been impossible just a week earlier played out every day. Human children from the fleet's family quarters sat cross-legged on the floor with Volani youngsters, sharing meals and playing simple games that needed no common language. 8-year-old Park So Young taught a group of young Volani how to fold paper airplanes, while they showed her how to weave the beautiful crystal patterns that were traditional to their culture. "Look," So Young called to her mother as one of her paper creations soared across the room. Lasai made it fly even better. The young Volani girl, who had been saved by Dr. Kong Juan, beamed with pride, her large dark eyes sparkling with joy. The bandages around her torso were the only reminder of how close she had come to death. Now she laughed and played like any healthy child, the terror of the pirate attack already fading into memory. In the engineering sections, something even more extraordinary was taking place. Human and Villani engineers worked side by side, sharing knowledge that advanced both civilizations by decades. Chief Engineer Choi Soo-min found himself fascinated by Villani power distribution systems, while his counterpart Velahan marveled at human metallurgy techniques. "Your quantum field generators are incredible," Soo-min said, running his hands over the alien machinery. "The efficiency is at least 30% better than our best designs." Velahan nodded enthusiastically. "But your whole composition. Way you layer different metals to create strength without adding mass, we never thought of such methods." They spent hours comparing technical specifications, drawing diagrams on portable screens, and debating the finer points of engineering. By the third day, they had sketched out designs for hybrid technologies that would benefit both species enormously. Dr. Kang Ji-won established a small medical exchange program, teaching Villani doctors about human anatomy while learning the intricacies of their four-heart circulatory system. The knowledge gained during those 6 days would save countless lives in the future, as both species now understood how to treat each other's injuries and illnesses. "Your healing techniques are remarkable, Dr. Teichfell," the colony ship's chief medical officer told G1 as they reviewed patient files together. "The way you adapt to unknown physiology, it's like watching medical miracles happen." G1 smiled humbly. "We learn by doing. When lives are at stake, you find ways to make things work." But it wasn't just technical knowledge being shared. Cultural exchanges flourished throughout the ship. Villani musicians performed their haunting crystal song melodies for human audiences, while human marines taught traditional Earth combat forms to interested Villani who wanted to learn self-defense. Commander Jang Haijin found herself giving impromptu lectures on human history to groups of fascinated Villani scholars. They were particularly interested in humanity's journey from a single world to a spacefaring civilization. "Your species achieved interstellar travel in less than 2 centuries, observed Professor Keshnoth, an elderly Villani historian. "Most species take millennia to make such progress." "We had good motivation," Haijin replied with a wry smile. "Our planet kept trying to kill us, so we figured we'd better find some backup worlds." The Villani found human humor both baffling and delightful. The idea of joking about mortal danger was completely foreign to their culture, but they began to understand that it was how humans coped with the harsh realities of their existence. On the 5th day, Captain Tessara made a decision that would change galactic history. She sent a formal message to the Villani High Council on New Villana, recommending immediate diplomatic contact with the human government. Her report was detailed and passionate, describing not just the rescue, but the character of the people who had saved them. "These beings are not the monsters we believed them to be," she wrote. "They are protectors, healers, and friends. They risk everything for strangers and ask nothing in return. If there are truly honorable species in this galaxy, humanity stands at the forefront." On the final day of their journey, New Villana appeared on the view screens like a blue-green jewel suspended in space. The planet was beautiful, with vast oceans and continents covered in purple vegetation that was already being transformed by Villani. Terraforming efforts. Captain Tissera stood on the bridge of the human flagship Iron Resolve beside Admiral Park, watching their destination grow larger on the screens. The bridge was quiet, filled with the bittersweet knowledge that their time together was ending. "Admiral," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion, "my people owe you everything. When we first saw your ships, we called you monsters. Now I know you're heroes." Park smiled sadly, his weathered face showing the weight of command and the cost of their victory. "We're not heroes, Captain. We're just people. Flawed, frightened people who try to do the right thing when it matters. The Galactic Council will hear of this," Tissara promised, her voice gaining strength. "They'll know that humanity deserves a place among the civilized species. You've earned respect through your actions." Park shook his head gently. We don't need their approval or recognition, Captain. We have something much better, friends who know our true nature. As the human fleet prepared to depart, something unprecedented happened. The Villani High Council, acting on Captain Tissera's report and their own gratitude, transmitted a formal message directly to Earth. It was the first time in galactic history that a non-human civilization had requested a mutual defense pact with humanity. The message was simple, but profound. To the people of Earth and all human worlds, the Villani Republic formally requests alliance and friendship with your species. You have proven yourselves to be guardians of the innocent and protectors of the weak. We would be honored to stand beside you in the darkness between stars. News of the alliance spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, in 100 different species councils, beings who had dismissed humanity as savage Deathworlders began to reconsider. If the peaceful Villani trusted the humans, perhaps there was more to these mysterious beings than anyone had realized. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had shown that the most dangerous species could also be the most compassionate, and that sometimes the greatest strength came not from conquest, but from protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. As Admiral Park's fleet set course for home, their ships scarred but victorious, he stood in his ready room, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, other voices might cry out for help. Pirates might threaten more innocent civilians. Tyrants might oppress the weak, and when they did, humanity would answer. Lieutenant Kimbora entered with the daily reports. Finding her admiral lost in thought, "Sir, the fleet is ready to jump to hyperspace." Park nodded slowly. "Signal all ships, Lieutenant. Take us home." As the human fleet disappeared into the swirling vortex of hyperspace, they left behind more than just a rescued colony. They left behind the beginning of a new age, an age where humanity would no longer be seen as monsters lurking in the dark, but as the guardians who answered when innocents called for help, because that's what humans do. They protect those who need protecting, even if it costs them everything. The end.